Okay, everybody watching this, if you want to join the chat, go to bravenewnormal.substack.com. It's the only place the chat is happening. If you want to join the conversation, everybody and anybody can join the conversation, leave questions, comments, whatever. If you want to watch the recordings of these live streams, I put up a free 30-minute preview every single week. But if you want to watch the full recording, you have to be a paid subscriber at bravenewnormal.substack.com. It's $5 a month, $50 for the year, or you can be a paid subscriber on X. It's $5 a month. You don't have to double up. Paid subscribers on both platforms receive all the same shit. So if you want to watch the full recordings of these, which I highly recommend because Peyman usually starts cooking like around the 30-minute mark and drops some jewels for the last half of the live stream, $5 a month, bravenewnormal.substack.com, or $50 for the year. Peyman Askari, you beautiful son of a bitch. How you doing?
Hanging in there, buddy. How are you?
Oh, dude, I'm trying not to be a grumpy old man today. I'm trying not to be extra spicy, but God damn it, man. I'm going to try to refrain from saying the word fuck every second word, because whenever I get wound up, that's how it comes out. I don't know why, but F-bombs just start dropping. But today I'm going to try to restrain myself. I'm going to try not to complain too much. I'm going to try not to be too much of an asshole, because I know it's really irritating to just sit and watch a live stream where some guy in his bedroom is just complaining about things. So I'm going to try to refrain from that. But I am feeling a little sharp. I'm feeling like throwing some darts today. So that's where I'm at. What's going on in your world, man?
I have a solution for you. If you're swearing too much, do what I do. You just adopt a nervous laugh. You know, like everything is
just
going
becomes
to hell.
super socially awkward.
Yeah. It's like it's my coping mechanism. I just start laughing as things get worse.
So you were, before we started live stream, hold on, everybody. Sorry, we already have activity in the chat, so I'm just a little bit distracted by that. Anyways, JP's watching. What's up, my brother? I'm going to have you back on Brave New Normal soon. And then I have one new chat message. People, if you're in the Riverside chat, please go to bravenewnormal.substack.com and join the chat there. I'm not responding to people in the chat here. I'm sorry, guys. It's just too hard to keep up with a million different chats. Anyways, Peyman, before we started recording, you were saying something. You want to go into it?
Yes. What was I saying? The Canada's on fire?
Yeah.
I don't want to dominate the conversation. We can have a back and forth, but this Cowichan tribe with a Richmond Superior Court ruling that's invalidated fee simple. So fee simple is it's a form of property right. It's the highest form of property right. When they were issuing this in the 1800s, they were worried that Americans were going to come up and dominate British Columbia. So they're like, you know what? We're not going to do this thing where the queen or the king owns the land and we're lending it out to you. You go prospect, you find the plot of land and you mark it out and we'll give it to you for a price or whatever. And it's yours forever. You know, you can hand it down to your kids. And then the court came in and said, actually, we're going to invalidate that. So the court's authority is higher than whatever the king's was in the 1800s.
Yeah.
And that's just background. But my point is, I think the Cowichan tribe, they've really probably didn't intend to do this. They poked the hornet's nest. People are actually freaking out now.
Well, of course they are. Imagine if you bought a piece of land and then suddenly your provincial courts decide that it doesn't really belong to you. Like so for people watching this who may not know my background, I'm from Richmond, BC, where all this is happening. That's the city I'm from. That's where I grew up. Now, Richmond, growing up, I'm just going to give you guys some background, was a middle-class, lower middle-class town. We were across the bridge from Vancouver. Nobody ever went to Richmond. If you went to Vancouver and told people you were from Richmond, they looked at you like you were from the Hills Have Eyes, you know? But back then, like, my mom was a single mom. It was a safe place for single moms to raise their children where rent and everything, cost of living was affordable. And then somewhere around 95, 96, some people say it's earlier, but this is my recollection, all of the Chinese money showed up. And there were billions and billions of Chinese money funneled into, of Chinese dollars funneled into Richmond, BC. All of our houses that we grew up in, the houses that we rented, some people owned, The owners all sold to the Chinese because they were offering 3-4 times what the houses were worth. And those of us who were renters, people like me, were kicked out of their houses because the houses had been sold and our houses were bulldozed to the ground. Mansions were erected over top. Now, if you go to Richmond and you go to places like Steveston, you can still find old Richmond. But for the most part, that city no longer exists. Now, what's ironic about all of this to me is the fact that our homes were stolen from us 30 years ago, and now they're doing it again. But this time, they are gifting it to this Indian band for I don't know what reasons. I don't understand the justification. Why? Because it's unceded territory. But this is where land acknowledgements naturally lead. And for those of you watching this who may not be aware further of more of my background, I'm Métis. My mother is Plains Cree Indian. So I actually have a real view on this. I understand the inner workings of it. And most Indian bands are committed, absolutely devoted to taking advantage of their victim status as much as humanly possible. And this is a prime example of that. Now, there was a video that emerged on X the other day of a East Indian gentleman at City Hall where he was giving this fiery speech in front of people, I guess, holding up their phone cameras and news cameras and stuff. Now, I believe I know him. I believe I went to high school with him. He was a little bit older than me. But that guy is old stock Richmond. That guy has been in Richmond since he was a child. And more than likely, he bought property in Richmond before the Chinese flood, or his parents owned property and he inherited it from them. But the point is this isn't a guy who just showed up overnight. More than likely, this is the son of farmers who own farmland in Richmond, have passed it on to him, or somebody who bought a home in one of the neighborhoods in Richmond when it was still what it used to be. Point is, now this guy is looking at potentially losing his home or having to pay property tax to an additional property tax to the Cowichan Band or whatever. I don't understand it. So Peyman, what do you know? Can you break it down a little more?
Yeah, I mean, his parents bought it in the 70s. And just a side note, a funny post I saw, the guy who comes out and complains, he's like, the bank won't, won't renew my mortgage. And someone's like, who the hell pays a mortgage for 50 plus years? So I thought that was funny. But yeah, I don't think this has ever happened. I can't remember a time when the title owner, we just assume we own the land, but there is an office that authorizes the title, that manages the title, that hands out the title. It's usually the courts. We assume it's the courts, the government. Now they've assigned it to a completely different authority, the tribes in this case, and nobody knows what's going on. The banks have no idea what to do, and banks they love just deferring responsibility. Oh, there's nothing we can do, subject to the law, it's this, that, the other thing. So the guy might get his mortgage, not renewed, which means, I don't know, I guess you could lose the house. The whole concept of mortgage, I never understood. You're paying interest, but then if you miss a payment and you paid half the mortgage, it's not like you retain half ownership of the house. The bank's like, I'll just take the whole thing. So the guy's in
a mortgage is essentially, I mean, it's like a credit card, right? It's a loan at an insane interest rate. You know what I mean? Look, at the end of the day, I think property ownership is important. I think owning a home is important just for the ability to have home equity with a bank. But if you think about it, like at brass tacks level, essentially what you're doing is you're taking a substantial loan from a bank at a crazy interest rate most times, right? I remember somebody was saying to me the other day that in the 1980s, their parents bought a house and the interest rate was 23%, which is nuts. Nowadays, I don't know what the interest rate is currently at, but it's usually under double digits. The point is that you're taking a loan from a bank to own a piece of property, and then you're paying the bank back with interest on that loan. But the thing is, you don't actually own the property. The bank owns the land. They own your property. You're instead of renting from a landlord who owns the property and is responsible for all of the maintenance and upkeep and fixing things when things go wrong. You're just renting from a bank who does none of that for you. Right? And so technically on paper, you own it, but you don't. Your bank owns it, and then they're renting it to you in your name. So, and the bank will give you a home equity loan, which is important. Home equity is important. But the bank will issue you a home equity loan because they know exactly what you're worth, because they own the property that you live on and you pay them rent. And it's kind of like a rent to own sort of situation. That's the agreement that you have with the bank. But you don't own that property. It's not your house. And now with the situation in Richmond, people are coming to figure that out. They're coming to find that out, that like, no, you don't own your property. And look, this guy, if he has to end up selling his house, or if he loses his home because they won't renew his mortgage, the bank doesn't like pay him back
Exactly.
the money that he's paid into it. Right? Like he has to pay the balance remaining on that home. And then he gets to pocket whatever profit is made from the sale of that property. But I don't even know, because is the property even for sale? Like, can they even sell it? And look, this is the other problem. When you give things like this up to Indian bands, they don't know what they're doing. Most Indian bands are horrifically disorganized. Right? Like they don't have a business mind at all. So they don't know what they're doing. So not only is this confusing for the person who owns or lives in the property that's owned by the bank, but now the responsibility is being handed over to a group of people who have no concept of what they're doing whatsoever. And more than likely in the future, I could see them running into a circumstance where they just try to lay claim to the property itself.
Yeah, you mentioned the Chinese, foreign Chinese coming and buying up your Richmond land. You have central bankers who have a lot of money. They come in and they either, like BlackRock, buys up the land, or they foreclose. So foreclosing is a very sinister way of acquiring the assets. Chinese have more money. Who knows how they made it? Maybe it was legitimate, maybe not. They come in and they buy up the land. And now you have this Cowichan tribe that's just been gifted the land,
Yeah.
technically. But the end result's the same. You, me, we, the people, we lose our assets. They, the elites, Chinese, central bankers, the First Nations, they gain the assets. So I think that's their end goal.
Well, it always is. That's always the end goal. Look, when you play this game, you lose every fucking time. Like the whole system, the way that it's designed, the way that it's look at credit cards, for example. Okay. So you have a credit card that has, say, like a 22% interest rate on it. And let's say your limit on your credit card is $20,000, which is about average for most people with decent credit, right? If you get even past that $10,000 threshold, you will never pay off that credit card. It will never happen. Now you are permanently indebted to the bank. So you know what I did? My little workaround for that was I took a personal equity loan from the bank, a line of credit, because my line of credit interest rate is 11%. My credit card interest rate is 22%. So what I do every month is I pay my credit card with my line of credit, and then I pay my line of credit.
Oh, I see. Well, now the bank knows and they're coming after you.
Fuck them. But the point is that this entire system is designed for you to fail. If you're planning on buying a home, I know this, and for most people, this isn't a reality, but the best case scenario is that you buy your home in cash, in full. Otherwise, once again, you are just a slave to the bank. That's the system that we are in. We are in a slavery system. You just don't see it because you don't have somebody who's whipping you and putting you in a fucking shed every night with 30 other slaves. But now you're in a debt slavery system. That's what this is. It's designed to look at students. The biggest lie ever told to young people is that you have to go to college or university. It's the biggest lie. I was talking to somebody the other day, a young woman, She's a software engineer. Do you know how she learned to do what she does? YouTube.
Yeah.
She gets paid over 6 figures a year to do what she does for a living, and she didn't do a day in college or university. She's the smartest young woman I've ever, well, not ever met, but one of the smartest young women I've met. Her attitude was, well, why would I pay $70,000, $80,000? I didn't have the money for an education, and I didn't want to take student loans because I didn't want to be in debt until I'm like 60, paying off those loans. So she's like, I just learned how to do what I do on YouTube. And then I advertised myself on the internet, started off as a contractor, just doing small contracts for small businesses until I eventually built myself into being able to work for big Fortune 500 companies. The biggest lie that's told to young people, and if there's young people watching this, hear me clearly. You do not know who you are at 18 years old, and you're not supposed to. When you're 18 years old, your 20s is all about exploration and discovery. It's all about figuring out who you are. It's about dating the wrong person. It's about buying that car that you shouldn't have. It's about racking up your credit card and having to claim bankruptcy because you can't pay it. Trust me, your credit, you'll get it back by the time you actually need it. That's another lie that the banks don't like people to know. If you rack up a credit card to like a $10,000 limit and then you just let it go and never pay it, eventually your credit comes back. Eventually you get it back. But to expect an 18-year-old to know what they want to do for the rest of their life is insane. And I watch parents pressure their children into going into that system, into finding a career when they don't even know who they are yet. And what happens to a lot of young people is the thing that they really want to do in life, the thing that they truly love, generally finds them somewhere in their mid to late 20s. But by that point, they've already gone through the system. They've racked up $100K in student loan debt. They're locked into a career. So that thing that they really love passes them by. And what ends up happening is the next thing, they're 40 years old, 350 pounds, screaming at some poor teenager in a Walmart because they forgot to bag their XXL underwear. Those miserable fucking people that you encounter every day, which makes up 90% of society. Those are the people. That's the type of person this system creates, this pressure to know who you are when you're 20 years old. And these kids don't understand it. They just think that that's the expectation. So they go into these careers, or they go into college or university just randomly picking a career that they think is going to make them money. It isn't until you're our age that you realize that money doesn't equal happiness. What you do in your daily life is what makes you happy. And that if you can find a way to balance your career with what makes you happy, or find a career in that field, that's the perfect situation. It's not being rich and it's not being wealthy. It's just about loving what you do. And unfortunately for most young people, they will never find that. And that's what, when you turn out to be our age, I'm 42, you're 41. How many of our friends do we know that had fucking meltdowns and divorced their wives and dated some 18-year-old dumbass? I know a lot. And it's because you hit our age, you hit where we are, and you freak the fuck out because you realize you wasted half your life and that you're unhappy and that you're miserable, but you won't admit it to yourself or others. So it's expressed in other ways. And that's the great lie. And really what it boils down to is pushing you into the debt slavery system, starting with student loan debt. That's where it starts. And then from there, you get credit cards. And then after that, you get a down payment on your home. It's the best day of your life. I own something. No, you don't. The bank just owns you more. That's it.
I say this a lot, maybe too much, but the West has lost its way, and it lost its way a long time ago. You're touching on this thing of debt and loans, debts. They're all the same thing. So student loans, credit card debt. You don't really need these. I mean, imagine in a perfect world that if you didn't have government funded universities and the university had to guarantee, they had to give their own loan to the student and they had to guarantee it. They're not going to hire a student for basket weaving or transing kids in schools because there's no ROI. They're going to, you have like a welding class and they say, we'll pay you the $8,000 for the welding class. and then we'll get you a job and you pay us back. And I'm not a big fan of socialism, but Canada used to do this in the healthcare space. They would train the nurses, they would give them lodging, and they would hire them for the hospital afterwards. So you have a plan. We don't have that plan with student loan. Mortgages, the way things work in agricultural countries that I'm familiar with, your parents gift you, when you get married, they give you a portion of the farm. You spend the next 40 years of your life working that farm, selling wheat, whatever money you get, you buy more farmland, and then when your kids get married, you give them farmland. It's like the opposite way of a mortgage, right? But what we
Yeah.
say is, no, 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 don't wait for it. Don't rely on your parents. The bank will give you money. What could possibly go wrong to be indebted to the banks?
But look at these people taking 80-year mortgages now. That became a thing last year. I was reading about it. That the banks have extended mortgages to 80 years.
Who the hell lives that much? You get your 20, you get a loan. Who's going to live 100 years?
The point is that you take an 80-year mortgage and your children find themselves in debt when they inherit that house for another 40 years.
How is that not slavery? How is passing debt, the sovereign debt, how is that not slavery?
It is. It is. Right? Like I had this idea. Me and my wife have been floating this idea because my son's 14. He's about 4 years away from moving out. And my daughter's 8. So she's 10, I don't know, maybe 9, 10, maybe 11 years away from moving out and, starting her life. And my dream, like my goal before I met my wife, I spent a lot of time in Hawaii in my 20s. And I made friends with like a lot of the surfers on the North Shore. And those guys they all had these Sprinter vans or these old school, like, panel vans that they had tricked out and put mattresses in the back. And a few guys had installed outlets in the back of the van, and they just lived in their vans. They just surfed and lived in their vans. And then they did odd jobs. Like they'd work security at a resort in Honolulu, which, working security at a resort in Honolulu, the worst thing that you encounter is like a, geriatric guy who's too drunk to get back to his room. So you got to help him, you're not encountering any real danger. And that to me was like, still is the ideal life. They don't own property. They don't have home equity or none of that shit. They're doing menial jobs, making probably bare minimum wage, but they wake up every morning, they surf. They go to so in Hawaii, at a lot of the beaches, they have public showers, right? You go, you take a shower, get ready, go to work, do your 4 to 8 hour shift, doing whatever it is you do, sweeping floors, whatever, jump in your van, go back to the beach and surf. And that was like, to me, that's like the most romantic way to live. And me and my wife have been talking about potentially doing that in the future. Like just, cause I'm a writer. That's what I do. So, wherever I can, pick up an internet connection and open my laptop, then I can go to work. And so to me, that's like simplicity is key, man. Yeah. Stripping things down, ignoring, like not overwhelming your life with material bullshit. It's funny. Last weekend, so for the first time in a long time, I've had a little bit of abundance in my bank account. And by abundance, I mean like a couple $1,000 extra dollars. So last weekend, I was with my wife. My daughter was at a birthday party, and I was like, you know what? I'm gonna buy myself a treat today. And when I buy myself a treat, like an expensive treat, right? So I was like, let's just go to the mall and walk around and see what I see. Brother, do you know what I bought myself?
A gold necklace, I don't know. A tattoo.
$16 blue sweatpants. Nice. That's the treat that I found. That's the only thing that interested me. $16 blue sweatpants from Urban Planet. That was it. Because I don't care. What I realized in walking around looking for a treat was that I don't fucking care about any of that shit.
Well, that's anymore. Because you're older now, right? Like when you're young, I do most of my shopping at the hardware store, like clothing shopping. That's where I get clothes. Don't try to one-up me, bro.
But the point is like I've just naturally simplified my life. But now I was thinking about it afterwards, and I was like, oh, I feel like a lot better now. I feel a lot better about life. because I don't have all this. Like, so in Alberta, the big thing, a lot of people own trailers, right? They own four-wheelers and snowmobiles and stuff, because you got all this oil money out here, and these guys who go up and work in the oil field who make a ton of cash and don't know what to do with it, so they buy all this really stupid shit. And like every winter and summertime, you see these trailers. Every Friday you see them steaming up the highway, pulling behind them, their trailer, and then behind their trailer, like 3 dirt bikes. Like it's just like this fucking caravan of shit. And I always think to myself, like, could you imagine just the stress in maintaining all that stuff? Like by the time you actually get to wherever you're going, you crack your beer, you fry your little hamburger on your little, hibachi barbecue. Like, you're so exhausted from just the maintenance of your stupid life. And I'm not shitting on anybody who does that. More power to you if that's what you enjoy. But it's just like, oh my God, you have so many things. And so anyways, I don't even know where I was going with that. But simplicity is key. Stripping things down.
Let me realign that. You said the Sprinter van. I would recommend getting an Airstream. I think your wife wouldn't. She's a little bit above a Sprinter van. But when you own property, you don't own it. Forget the bank. Let's say you buy it with cash. You have to pay property tax. Like you're constantly getting screwed. This is like, my friend was from Sri Lanka, and he said that at the time, the Tamil Tigers, whatever, they were in the Civil War, and he said you can't own anything. You can't show any wealth. You can't have a necklace. They'll come over around your house and say, listen, we saw you had a Gucci bag. We know you have money. Pay us the money so we can continue the Civil War. That's what it's like. That's what my impression of government in the West. They have this war they're unleashing against the people, which is actually us, through the bureaucracy. And they're squeezing us for anything they can get out of us. The asset that they're after the most right now is property, because it's easy. They know where it is. You can't hide your land. They know where it is. It's on the map. So the next thing is, for someone like you get a Sprinter van, but you have money, you put it in physical gold. Eventually they'll come after that too. These bastards will come after everything that you and I have.
Absolutely they will. And that's why, stripping things down is key. You know what I mean? Like, I don't know. I've been going through a lot in my mind lately, just about like what the future holds. This space that you and I live in with our podcasts. And, I always talk about this on the live stream, and, I sound like I'm like this bitter old man. So I'll try to refrain from going too deep into it. But I go through a lot of like, should I even do this anymore? Like, what's the point? Nobody's really paying attention. At times it feels like you're screaming into the void. And I don't mean paying attention in terms of views, because, frequently week over week, I'm in the top 100 on Substack, which is where I center. Like, if any links for my podcast circulate, I always make sure that they're Substack links. YouTube is going to nuke me in the future. I know that. So, but I always think to myself, like, are we having a real impact? Does anything we're saying even matter? Because this thing just goes on. Like, I was reading this morning, Mark Carney went and met with Xi Jinping, after that Southeast Asia conference. And anybody who didn't see this coming is woefully fucking stupid. The anti-Trump, anti-American propaganda was so effective in Canada. It's unreal. I mean, even in Alberta, like, talking to people, you talk to people and they're like, I'm afraid to go to the US with that crazy man down there. And these are like the hardest of hardcore Canadian conservatives. And it's like, man, this thing that just was executed beautifully. Now, people like you and I saw it because I don't know, maybe we're smarter or just more aware or just more intuitive, but we saw what they were doing. But it's I'm stunned by how unaware and naive Canadians are. And so now Mark Carney is putting together new trade deals with China that are just going to bring us closer to China and further away from the United States. And look, no matter what you think about the United States and their military industrial complex in this scenario, whether if you have to choose between China or the US are the good guys. So you're aware.